Yes, I'm hearing you quite well.
It's hearing you loud and clear, Doc.
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Yes, I'm
Are
hearing
you
you.
hearing? Amen. Amen. Well, good evening. Good evening. My name is Stephen McMaster. I am chaplain in the prison of the British Virgin Islands, and I am also a chaplain associated with Global Chaplains Alliance. It has been a real privilege and pleasure for me to not only work with GCA, but to work with my counterparts in the other British overseas territories. And tonight we have with us Chaplain Elmead Allen out of Anguilla and Chaplain Bentley Robinson out of Cayman Islands. So you've got the A, the B, and the C.
Yes,
And
sir.
tonight we have been invited to have a conversation as it relates to mental health and mental health in the context of prison work. But before we get into our conversation, I think it's important that you get to know a little bit about who you're listening to tonight. And so I'm going to ask Chaplain Allen if he can take this moment to say hello and let us know a little bit about who he is. Chaplain Allen. I am hearing him. I'm not sure if he's hearing me. Chaplain Robinson.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm Chaplain Robinson, serving in the Cayman Islands Prison Service. And it's a distinct pleasure to um, be a part of this forum tonight and also to be able to serve within the prison. And I take this a privilege to join with Dr. Monica and my fellow colleague in the work that we do within the prisons to help bring about change in people's lives. And I am particularly um, honored to be a part of this forum talking about this vital topic tonight on mental issues. So I am just looking forward to what we'll be able to share together tonight. Thank you.
Well, this is going to be fantastic. So when we talk about mental health, what we're really talking about from our perspective is the ability of a person to deal with the things that come about us to us in life. Sometimes some of these trials that come to us can make us angry, can make us disappointed, of having despondency, having a sense of despair. So what we're talking about is in a normal run of life, how we respond to the various trials that come at us. Um, we were hoping that we would be able to make the connection as to how mental health affects us in a normal run of life so that persons are able to connect to what we experience with persons who have been incarcerated. Um, I think most of us have had the unfortunate privilege of going through COVID 19. And while many people in COVID 19 were restricted to the confines of their homes, some persons, even when diagnosed with COVID, might have been restricted only to their room in their part of the house because there were other people who lived in the house and they weren't able to associate with them. And we wanted to start this conversation because one of our chaplains, Chaplain Elmead, had the experience of having COVID 19, and we wanted him to talk to us about how it impacted him so that we can begin to make the connection to what is mental health and what is what we call mentally unwell. And that would give us the foundation for the conversation we wanted to have tonight. So I'm not sure if Chaplain Elmida is hearing us now and if he's able to lay that foundation for us. Chaplain Elmida, you there? And can you do that? So, Dr. Monica, can you relay the question for us, please? We're asking Chaplain Elmi to share with us his experience of COVID 19. When COVID 19 occurred and persons found themselves, let's say, trapped in the confines of their own home, many persons, I believe, struggled with the sense of having the liberty of moving freely being restricted. Um, and oftentimes, what that is doing is that you haven't done anything, but you are now restricted. When you would have gone out casually to the grocery store, to a restaurant, to work, all of a sudden you are prevented from being able to enjoy any of those privileges. And when you start to think of how you would have felt during that time, you now also think about how you may have reacted to persons. Um, I think many people in that situation were angry, but not knowing who to be angry with because you're restricted, your movements are restricted, your associations are restricted, but it's restricted by an invisible enemy to your well-being. And that caused persons to be angry. Um, with COVID-19, we were restricted from physical contact with each other. We had to go the extra mile in sanitation when we interacted with people. And when you had to do that, it generated within an individual a sense of feeling demoralized because it's as if you are a virus. There's something wrong with you. So you can't engage with people. But from where you are standing, there is nothing wrong with you. You're not sick and you don't feel the need and understand why you have to be confined. When someone is in that situation, I think it is understandable that that person's brain or their mind might begin to play, let's say, tricks on you. Sometimes you start hearing things that aren't there, you start seeing things that aren't really there. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about being mentally unwell. That in the essence of living your life, you find that the normal things in life, you cannot respond to them as is expected. Uh, Chaplain Robinson, would you like to jump in and talk any about your COVID experience? What was it like for you during the time of COVID 19?
Yeah, well, as we all know, um, that was one of the most major thing that happens to us right across the world. And here in my neck of the woods, I think the COVID experience created a greater mental health issues across the island and more so within the prisons, with persons becoming very depressed, you know, and physically ill, and based upon their environmental stress, you know, um, Persons were not really thinking straight, didn't know what to do. And I think, speaking within the prison context, um, there were times when I think, even for staff, they were more looking at prisoners as those who were um, having mental illness and not really looking at themselves. And so coming out of COVID-19, we found that training was very vital for persons to understand what mental illness is about, and how to really deal with it, deal with persons who are struggling with mental illness. I think a lot of times persons struggle with mental illness quietly because they are afraid that persons may call them mad people or crazy, so they suffer with it quietly. They are withdrawn. They have various mood swings. They will lash out at people. They became anxious, having abnormal moods, becoming confused, and sometimes not quite sure what is really happening to them. So I think training to help persons to understand what mental illness is about and some of the symptoms to look forward to was very, very vital. So having gotten through the COVID experience and things getting back to normality, even within the prison, um, we have had a lot of persons coming into the prison with mental illness. And sometimes um, it does not come out of them until they really get into stressful situations within the prison. It's as if it was laying dormant within them, but coming into an environment, a stressful environment, it really brings it out of them, where they begin to think differently, act differently. And sometimes if there's no training for staff, then staff won't really know how to deal with it, how to handle it. So I think training is very, very important for persons to understand what it is, and some of the causes and the symptoms to look forward to when those things are happening. So
Um, and while we want to jump into the the symptoms of someone who is mentally unwell, I think it would be of far more value to persons in this conversation to understand to some extent the things that can trigger us while we're mentally well, that brings us onto the road of mental unwellness. Um, in so doing, I am thinking of a prison environment. And I don't think that a lot of people understand how prison affect an individual. Most times when people think about prison, they start off with the idea of what we see in the news or in the movies where it is glamorized, or at the end of the movie when you had the villain is captured and we're talking about justice, then the movie ends, that person goes to prison. But people don't really understand what happens to a person that goes to prison. And that's why, for me, in starting this conversation, I was hoping we would have been able to make the connection with COVID-19 when people were locked away in their homes, because that, for some people, when they talked about it, I've heard people say that for them allowed them to understand what prison is. Someone's liberty is taken away, someone's ability to move freely, someone's ability to move when they choose to move is all restricted. And one of the things that happened to a person who finds himself in a prison environment, the first thing you'll notice is your liberty has been taken from you and is now being managed by someone who you may not know. And I would like to ask Chaplain Robinson, since we're talking here, have you noticed or have you had any experiences of seeing what that is like for a person when they come into prison?
Yeah, absolutely. Persons can be fine mentally before they go to prison. And so one of the causes of mental illness is environmental stress, the environment that a person finds themselves in. And like you say, Stephen, when you realize that when the reality hits you, that your freedom is taken, you've been taken away from your family, you've lost your job, you've lost property, all of these things, and you're locked away, sometimes for a long time. And when that stress comes upon a person, it brings out mental illness. And this is why, when persons are incarcerated, eh, yeah,
Anger outbursts.
yeah,
We see people who struggle with not knowing how to deal with the emotions that they're experiencing. We see people who may not have the emotional intelligence, let's say, to even identify what emotion they're actually feeling, to know whether they're feeling angry or lost or despondent or anxious. And for that person who is now in the woods, so to speak, of their emotions, not knowing whether or not they are allowed to express their emotions because they're in a strange environment. That's what I want you to help us to understand. What have you seen from persons who find themselves in that situation?
yeah, well, exactly what I was saying earlier. I mean, the environmental stress that hits them certainly will bring out anxiety, bring out anger, bitterness, resentment, all of these things. And this is why, um, where the clinical team and chaplaincy comes in is to really meet with those persons and to hear them, see how they are doing, see how they are feeling, see how they are coping. Um, Vigilance is key. Staff have to be vigilant to watch the mood swings, um, the abnormal moods, yeah, to see if persons are going into depression and stuff like those. Because definitely, going into situations like a prison situation where you have lost your freedom, will definitely mess with a person's mental state, and drive them into into depression, for example. So we have seen over the years, where persons could be okay, doing okay before they come to prison, but coming into the prison changes their whole mental mood, because some persons believe that they have reached to the end of their road. They have lost so much thing and there's no hope. And that is why, chaplaincy and clinical teams and so on are geared to help persons to know that there's still hope. Yeah, so we have come across a lot of those in prison. The environmental stress that hit. Now, and that's not the only cause that will lead person into mental illness. There's also the genetic factors as well. Sometimes it falls within the family. Yeah, and you know, physical illness can cause um, can lead to mental illness as well. Yeah, so there are different things that we have to look forward to in the lives of persons when they go into prison. Uh,
Into what societal standards are. They're normal. But when they come into the environment, there is something that acts as a trigger that may unleash something that is resting dormant in their biology.
with persons who goes to prison, but it also happened to persons who work in prisons. I think sometimes we can pay a lot of attention to persons who comes into prison, but not paying attention to those who actually work in prison. And the stress that comes, that cause, staff to get tired and weary and anxious and sometimes confused and sometimes getting in even to panic attack, maybe things that they have never really experienced before, and that is why I said earlier that sometimes even persons who work in prisons may be experiencing certain symptoms and keep it quiet because they don't want to ever think that they are having mental issues because persons may look at them as being crazy or mad, so they keep it quiet. And that is dangerous. And this is where counseling becomes a vital part of what we do within prisons. Yeah, so yeah. Um, a person's um, the change that comes into a person's life by going off to prison, for example, can really bring out um, of them the mental some mental disorder. It does trigger things within their mind. That sometimes they really didn't know that was really there. Because even with us as chaplains, sometimes we are human beings. We do a lot. We have to listen to people, and we get drained sometimes, and the job becomes very stressful. And if we are not careful to find outlets and to find persons like yourself, Stephen and Elmead, where we can talk and bounce things off each other, I really don't know what would have happened to us. So so our job can really bring out things inside of us in our stress, and cause us to wonder what is really happening to us. To put it this way, we call it burnout. We
Mhm.
call it burnout.
But
And sometimes we get burnout and not even quite sure that it's really burnout. We feel the pressure, so it goes across the board. So
y-
sometimes we get into certain situations and it really brings out things out of us that we really didn't know was there. And it works the same way with those who goes to prison. They might have a sense of normality before they go, but they getting into those environments and the stress and the loss of freedom, can really begin to show up the mental disorder. Um,
you just raised a flag because you talked about the impact of the instability and the unpredictable nature of a person's response when they come into prison, how that affects the staff who works in the prison. And you, in raising that flag, I also heard in what you were saying the concern that persons not wanting to be stigmatized with mental unwellness may not be prepared to face it. And I'm wondering, to what extent do we see people turning to substances or to some other kind of behavior that is not consistent with normalcy in order to cope or to hide the stresses that they're facing, and to what extent that is having an impact on mental health. So that if we talk about that, we may also be positioning individuals who are paying attention to this conversation to recognize that mental health is not just about those persons who are on the extreme end of the negative scale, but persons who, because of their fear of the stigma, who are being impacted negatively by some of the stresses in life, they try to bury and not deal with the symptoms, and that positions them to have a greater sense of mental unwellness.
Point. And I think what happens a lot of times is that persons can live in denial. Persons can live in denial because a lot of persons usually don't want persons to know that they have mental issues a lot of times, because I just say, to use your word, it becomes a stigma, you know, and this is why it is very, very important in how we approach persons who are struggling with mental illness. We have to be very careful because when we identify a person, for example, who is struggling with mental illness, that person may not accept that they are really struggling with mental illness. They will tell you that they are fine. There's nothing wrong with them. How do you then deal with such a person? You know,
Great question.
we can, if they are diagnosed with the problem, and then, for example, staff have to deal with them. We have to be very careful because they might be living in denial, and it goes back again to training, because not every person knows how to deal with somebody who is mentally unstable. So how they talk to them becomes a risk. How you handle them, because remember now, mental illness has to do with a person's behavior, their actions. Sometimes they get confused. Sometimes they are feeling the mental pain and they don't want to feel pain, and this is why they will find certain things to help them, so like smoking, drinking, um you know outburst of anger. It just comes out of them. And if persons don't know how to deal with them, then it can really make matters worse. So we have found that you have persons who simply live in denial, not just persons who goes to prison, but persons who work in prison as well. Sometimes you watch a person and you begin to see some changes in that person. You say that person is not really acting the way that you know them to be, and you realize that stress is taking a toll, and so their actions and their attitudes begin to change. So it's not just with those who goes to prison. So again it goes back to being able to discern and being able to get the proper training and the proper understanding of how to identify the signs of mental of mental illness and how to deal with those persons. Um, I'll give you examples. I mean, sometimes you may approach a person who is struggling with mental illness, and you try to just rough them up, and you said, you call them crazy, or you call them mad people. There's absolutely no compassion and no wisdom in approaching those persons. We have to be careful. Persons have to be careful. To learn not to raise their voices and to intimidate those persons, but to be kind and respectful and to be patient with those persons, um, to help that persons to feel safe, to acknowledge what they are saying and don't let them feel that they are crazy, if you know what I mean, because if they are living in denial, they don't want anybody to make them feel that they are crazy. You know what I mean? And this is where they need help, counseling or medical help, treatment, stuff like that. So it's a very, very serious and yet important thing when it comes to working within prisons, when it comes to mental health, and especially within prisons where there is not a good facility to facilitate those persons. That's the next thing again. Not every, well, I would imagine that some prisons may not have the facility and the equipment to deal with mental health issues.
And, and, and,
Um,
and Bentley, while you're saying all of that, I think we've just given people a whole lot to think about. And what I think, because we would say that you'd sometimes need to disconnect. So what I'm going to recommend at this moment, that let's take a moment to disconnect and allow persons to digest some of what we have just put on the table, and then let's pick up the conversation. Dr. Monica, can we take a quick break just to allow people an opportunity to soak in some of what we've just put out on the table?
Thank you so much. And I'm hoping that folks can hear me now. Are you guys hearing me? I'm back here trying to monitor it myself. I think we should be good by now. I'm just praying that we are. I do have Chaplain Elmead with me as well on the phone. So let's see how this is going to go. You guys have been doing great so far. And I hope, yes, I hear myself back because I'm actually monitoring YouTube. So folks are hearing me right now. Let's take a quick break, guys. We'll be right back. Chaplain Elmead, can you just say hello to the folks?
Hello, good evening to everyone being with you. In spite of all the
All right.
difficulties, we give God thanks and praise.
All right. I think Chaplain Elmead did just say a quick hello or something. I'm not hearing him, but
Yes,
hopefully.
I did. Yes, I did.
Okay. Yes,
Are
he
you
did.
hearing me?
All right, guys, we will be right back.
not sure if Dr. Monica heard us. Stephen.
She said she gave us a thumbs up. She heard us.
Okay, all right.
Are you or your loved one struggling with mental health challenges? Feeling overwhelmed? isolated, or just not yourself? You're not alone. Mental well being is crucial for everyone, and support is available. Tune in to the Mental Health Talk right here on Caribbean Gospel Radio FM, your station, during the month of May for vital discussions on mental health. We cover a wide range of topics, from understanding common issues to finding pathways to support and resilience. This program is proudly brought to you by Global Chaplains Alliance. We believe in offering spiritual and emotional care to all, bridging the gap between crisis and comfort. Learn more about our compassionate work at www.globalchaplainsalliance.org. Don't miss the Mental Health Talk right here in Caribbean Gospel Radio FM, your weekly dose of understanding, hope, and connection. We want to welcome you. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Mental Health Talk right here on Caribbean Gospel Radio FM. Tonight, we embark on a deeply important and often overlooked discussion: mental health within penal institutions. Now, as we've said, the environment of a prison presents unique challenges to mental well being, not just for the incarcerated, but for the staff who work within those walls every day. So, as we continue to prioritize mental health awareness, it's crucial to extend our understanding and support to every segment of our society, including those that are impacted by the correctional system. Tonight, we have the distinct pleasure or the distinct privilege of welcoming three extraordinary individuals who serve on the front lines of this often unseen ministry. Because of the situation that we had earlier on, we had some technical difficulties. Don't know why. I was not able to introduce them to you properly. Now, these three men, they are British Overseas Territories prison chaplains, and they bring invaluable experience and compassionate care to those within correctional facilities. And these could be jails, prisons, you name it. So tonight we have Chaplain Stephen McMaster, who is a long-standing and highly respected chaplain from the British Virgin Islands. Yeah. Chaplain McMaster serves with Global Chaplains Alliance, where he's also the commandant for GCA in the British Virgin Islands. Thank you so much, Chaplain McMaster. And then we have Chaplain Elmead Allen, who is a dedicated prison chaplain, and he's also a pastor. He serves in Anguilla. Some of you don't have a clue where that is. That's in the Caribbean, beautiful island. And then we have Chaplain Bentley Robinson. He is a committed prison chaplain from the Cayman Islands. So Chaplains Allen and Robinson, they have both, yes, recently completed their associate's degree in chaplaincy. Yay! Part of cohort 9. And as I said, they've recently completed their associate's degree in chaplaincy and pastoral care education with Emet Global Theological Seminary and College in Atlanta, in Georgia, United States of America, demonstrating their ongoing commitment to professional, can somebody say professional? To professional excellence in their vital work. Gentlemen, it is an honor to have you with us, and thank you for making time to share your experiences and your insights with us tonight. And I'm checking in again. Can you all hear me?
I'm hearing you, Dr. Monica.
That's Chaplain Elmead. All right, hang on one second.
Yep.
I don't know why I have to just keep changing headphones for this. And I want to hear from Chaplains McMaster and Robinson. Are you both hearing me? Wait a minute. They're not hearing me. Chaplain McMaster, are you hearing me? Now I get one and two are gone. Chaplain Elmead, you're there, right?
Right, I'm still here.
Yes, I'm getting a feedback, and I'm not too sure um, where it is coming from. The gentlemen,
Not
they're
sure.
not hearing me apparently. I can see them, they can see me, but I cannot. I don't know what's going on with them. Okay. Now I know. I see what's going on. Gentlemen, can you hear me now?
I'm hearing you. You
Okay.
just your audio just came in.
It
You just came
did.
back.
Apparently, automatically it goes off once I exit the room with you guys to do other stuff. So we got Chaplain Elmead in, and we can actually hear him on YouTube and Facebook, but I'm not sure if
Okay.
you can hear him back
Good
there.
evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Chaplain Elmina. I'm hearing you now. You hearing me?
Can't hear them very well.
But you're hearing us.
We are hearing you loud and clear.
Okay. So thank you for that break, Doc. And I hope that while we were out, that persons had an opportunity to digest a lot of what we put on the table, because we're saying that the environment of prison is an environment that can make a person who has been seemingly mentally well to become mentally unwell. And that the instability that we would find as a result of the restrictions placed on people incarcerated, that has a domino effect on the persons who have to care for them. So we're talking about the staff in the prisons, the jails, the correctional facilities. As a result of what's happening with persons' mental well-being by being incarcerated, it affects the staff we just said, but there is another group of persons that we would like to talk about that are impacted by mental unwellness that's generated from a prison environment. And when we say prison environment, one of the things I want to point out is that a prison environment is sometimes unpredictable. We can't predict the violence that we're going to experience.
Hmm.
We can't predict when we may have to go through a security measure that interrupts whatever was scheduled to happen in the prison on that day. And that pressure that comes as a result of that fluidness to ensure that the security of a prison is maintained, it affects the prisoner. That domino affects the staff, but there are people who are impacted who are not in the prison. The family of the prisoner, the inmate, or the family of the officer, because that person who is dealing with that difficulty in the prison environment, they have to find a way to release that emotion and emotional turmoil that is building inside of it. They have to find a way to release it. And sometimes, as they are unable to, one, I accept that they're having a difficulty, so
Mhm.
they're trying to bury it, they're trying to ignore it. Persons who engage them in their family sometimes may come with something that seems trivial, and you find that that person explodes. You might be, you might find that someone who is in
I was
prison
just using it to wipe my face.
is angry, and while you're doing everything that you can to try and make their life as comfortable as possible, you are trying to figure out what you are doing wrong and how that might be affecting them negatively. And that also raises the probability that family and loved ones can find that stress that then transfers to them becoming unable to cope with the normalcy of life and the pressures that they run into. And so what I'm proposing is that the mental health issues that are generated inside the prison can flow over into family and friends of those outside the prison. And I would like to find to get from my other colleagues if they have seen any of that kind of thing as an experience.
All right. So, did you want us to go to probably Chaplain Elmead to hear what he has
I
to
would
say?
love to hear from Chaplain Elmead since we've gone for so long without hearing his voice.
Chaplain Elmead, you're on. Go
I'm,
right ahead.
I'm hearing. Good evening, everyone. Again, I hope that Chaplain McMaster and Bentley can hear me, and to our audience. Um, I know that I wasn't able to pick up what the discussion, how far the discussion went tonight, but I know that we were talking about mental health within the penal system and how it affects not only just the inmates, but it also affects staff management and also affects the uh, families of the staff and families of the inmates. And so um, it's not unusual to hear of persons from the inmates within the penal system, within the prisons, suffering from mental illness. And many times, one of the issues that we have is the seclusion. And seclusion in any form can cause a sense of mental unwellness. If I just share maybe two examples with you, you would realize that if any of us are even in our homes for a while and we are locked in our homes, maybe because we are not able to go out for whatever reasons, and that's for any extended time, it begins to affect us. If we look at just a few years ago when we had COVID 19, I'm sure that many of us would remember and can identify with how we felt being indoors. We had to stay indoors. We were secluded at times from other people. Just quickly, if we have the time, Dr. Monica, a few minutes just to share. I remember um, when I was diagnosed with COVID
Yes,
19.
sir. We have
That
the time.
okay, when I was diagnosed with COVID 19, um, it was quite a difficult thing for me because while I was at home, I was at home. I had to be, the better word, locked away in my room, in a room, all by myself. And you know me, Dr. Monica. I am a very active person. I'm always doing something. And
Yes.
when I had to be locked in my room, it meant that even within my family, they I was not able to be around them. I was not able to to sit with them and whatever. And so even if they had something that they wanted to share or to give to me, it had to be placed on a table just next to the door. And when they were leaving for work, they'll leave all of my whatever I had to, needed to eat and whatever that. And I'm telling you, and if you remember, 14 days is what we had to be secluded from, isolated from. And by day three, I was really pulling my hair out of my head, what little bit I had left on my head. And so truly, really, when we think if that can do that to me, and bearing in mind that there are a few things. One is that I knew that that period of seclusion, um, that period of being locked away was only for a period of time. And I knew that. Even with that, it still had such a devastating effect on me. By day five, I was angry, I was upset. Day seven, I'm now beginning to try to find someone to blame. Why am I in this position? I'm blaming the doctor, I'm blaming the nurse for giving me that diagnosis, and I'm sure to all heavens that I do not have COVID-19. And so even with all of the knowledge that within the next 7 days, I will be able to be back out to my normal life. If we just think of people who are locked away, people who are in prison, and you understand the system that most persons may be in prison and they're what we call they were remanded. And so before they are even convicted to know exactly how much time they will serve, they can be there for a good while. And think of it that their freedom has been taken away from them. Uh, their livelihood, some of them have children, have wives, husband, and all that sort of thing. Some of them live very active life before. And to be placed into a position where all that is being just all of a sudden taken from them. If we stop a minute and think on your own self, you get an understanding of how the whole aspect of being incarcerated can have such a dramatic and difficult mental um, problem in our lives, in inmates' lives. And so, because especially when they don't know, the other point I just want to quickly raise is this that um, if you know, if you have an idea of how long you may be uh, locked away for, or how long your sentence may be, it still doesn't even help because one of the problems that we will see inmates encounter, and we are talking about inmates who enter into the judicial system, enter into the prisons. These people enter and they have no history, no evidence of mental illness, but just the environment can bring them to that place of developing mental illness. And it begins with anger, it begins with frustration. And that, when you've worked in those environment for a while, you can try to understand how difficult it is for inmates. It doesn't only affect inmates, as I said, but it affects also staff. When a staff have to deal with an inmate who is already angry, upset because that staff, whether male or female, most times do not think that they have been rightly treated. They may protest the fact that they were not guilty to be locked away and all these sorts of things. They begin to retaliate. They begin to, their mental state causes them to begin to behave erratically, very abusive, and that sort of thing. And who is it that gets that, if we use the term, that pointed end of the stick? It is the staff. And maybe for the first few days, few weeks, the staff will acknowledge, well, that's part of my work and whatever. But after a few weeks, it begins to have a mental, negative mental effect also on the staff. And that affects the staff. So we have moved from the mental health situation affecting the inmate, and it's now affecting the staff because they feel that they do not deserve the type of abuse that they're getting. Sometimes the abuse is verbal, other time it can be physical. And then the reaction to that, the next reaction to that is that that staff, male or female, leaves the prison after his or her shift. Now, let me step back and show you again another thing that will cause an inmate and it will cause an inmate's mental health to really just begin to get worse is the fact that when and staff will say, well, everything is going to be okay and whatever. The staff will leave at the end of his or her shift to go home. The inmate stays incarcerated. And so the staff goes home, and two things happen. If the staff doesn't know how to separate, how to deal with separating his or her work from home life, they will take it in their home. They can get home and they can be a little bit groggy, a little bit angry, sharp, and they give their spouses, whether the wife or the husband, a kind of rough answer. They don't feel like talking, they're angry, but also give that to the child. And you have what is a real desperate situation developing, because the mental health uh, problem, the mental health challenges that has started with the inmate now has been passed on to the staff. The staff now passes that on to his or her family, and then the staff then gets ready another day to come back into the workplace, which is hostile, difficult, and all these sorts of things. So it's amazing how it affects everyone. It affects everyone. Dr. Monica?
and 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 with what
You there, Dr. Monica?
Chaplain Elmead,
Yes, we're here. We're here. Chaplain
with what
McMaster is asking your question.
Chaplain
Not
Elmead
hearing
have
him at all. So could he ask, could
with,
maybe you can translate for me?
with what Chaplain Elmead has done, it has cemented for us where we've talked about a prison environment and we've talked about the impact of the prison environment on people that may move them from being well to being mentally unwell and trigger episodes of mental health issues. But I would like us, if we are permitted the time, to now talk about some of the mental health issues that we may encounter within the context of prison, and
Dr.
even
Monica,
some of it.
you probably have to relay the question he's asking to me.
I will. Just stay right there. Or you can get
Okay.
another, maybe phone or computer to monitor YouTube so you could hear. But just stay right there. Don't say anything until I talk to you, okay?
Okay. All
Go
right.
right ahead, Chaplain Master.
So we're now talking about the issues that come as a result of the impact of the prison environment and the mental health. And a lot of times, persons who are mentally unwell, people see them as being a nuisance to be around. For whatever reason, the person is seeking for someone to understand their inability to manage the stresses that they're working with, and they're crying out for help. But instead of people being willing to engage and give help, we tend to see them as a public nuisance. And we see that in prisons also, that that person, rather than getting people to sit and understand them, will simply try to brush them aside. And sometimes that cry for help may go on unanswered until that person begins to behave in a way that is now considered criminal. And rather than that person finding the support they need to deal with their problem, they're now incarcerated for an extended period. I would like for us to have a conversation about how we see these issues that are generated because of mental unwellness, and whether or not we have experienced any of these, and if persons who are even listening, paying attention, may realize that a person's cry for help may move them from being a nuisance to having a behavioral issue that may end up leaving them being isolated or victimized as a result of their cry for help. I would like us to talk a little about that, my brothers.
Sure, that's pretty interesting. And for those who are just coming in, we have three prison chaplains here with us tonight. We have Stephen McMaster, who serves in the British Virgin Islands as a prison chaplain. We also have Elmead Allen, who's not on camera tonight. He's also a pastor and a prison chaplain in Anguilla. Then there is Minister Robinson, Bentley Robinson, who serves as a prison chaplain in the Cayman Islands. And I'm the host right here. I'm the facilitator. That's it. I don't serve in the prison. If I tell you my experience, I was not cut out for prison chaplaincy. I was not cut out for penal institutions chaplaincy. And I'll share briefly before you get into that. We were training right before COVID. And so when we got to the prison, it was very huge, right here in Georgia. Number one, we had to strip ourselves. So we couldn't go with anything except if you have a Bible. No handbags, no phones, no purses, nothing of that sort. We had to put them away in confinement. And then we got inside to this room where they were supposed to train us. And we had to go through about 10 doors. And every one of them went clang, clang, clang. There were metal doors. And for days and weeks, I had that in my head. And I said, Monica, the prison chaplaincy is not what you're called to. So I really lift my hats tonight to those of you who are called. It's such a special area because if you notice, Jesus spoke about it. He said, when I was in prison, you did not visit me. And then to another set, he said, when I was in prison, you visited me. So prison chaplaincy is another tier, another level. And you have to be specially called. Like first you're called to chaplaincy, then second you're called to prison chaplaincy. So these men that you're listening in tonight, they got double calling. So thank you so much for being here. So yes, go ahead. Continue the conversations as
And
yes, go ahead.
Dr. Monica, when you talked about all those doors, that those metal doors clanging
Yes.
as you
Yes.
go through them, I don't think that people understand or can begin to appreciate that for that person who is in prison, every time that door slams, it's a reminder that someone is in charge of their life. And if you have someone telling you over and over and over the authority they have over you, can you begin to imagine how that is affecting your mental health? So if you have just passed through 10 doors, 10 gates, that
Visiting.
every time they close, they, you're hearing one thing. But for
Yes.
that person who is the prisoner, who is the inmate, they are being reminded every time that closes, we are in charge of your life.
That is so true, Chaplain Master. Chaplain Robinson, while he was in class, he shared a story with us about the person who asked to close the door, I think. And if it's okay for him to share it, I would really love for him to share it so everybody could hear. Chaplain Robinson, would you mind sharing that story with us? And then we can come back.
Yeah, sure, sure. Um, yeah, so that story centers around a time when I worked as a prison officer in the prison service here in the Cayman Islands. And we, we see all sorts of things, as we watch the inmates under our care. We watch their mood swings, we watch their actions, their attitude, and in locking down an inmate in a cell where that inmate knows that they have no control over being locked in. They don't have a key to unlock themselves when they want, but somebody's going to slam a cell door behind them. Yeah. that that ought to hit home. And so one experience I had years ago was, locking down an inmate um, at night. And as I approached the cell to lock him in, he turned to me and he said, "Sir Robinson, could I lock my cell myself?" And that hit me so hard when he spoke those words. And so I stepped back and I said, yes, go ahead. And he held on to the door and he closed the door. And then all I had to do is to, what we normally do is to check, to make sure it's locked. That was a lesson because in my mind, I'm thinking that mentally, he was having difficulty hearing those doors locked behind him,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that he had no control.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with him getting the opportunity to close the door for himself, did something for him mentally. It gives him a little sense of, I don't know what to call it, a little sense of control,
Control,
you know, yeah,
authority.
authority for
Mm-hmm.
himself, yeah, because maybe that's something that he used to before he came to prison. He was
Mm-hmm.
locking his own door, but now somebody's locking him in.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a lesson for me back then, just allowing him to pull that door in for himself. And just to think that he could go to sleep with a little bit of peace. I would say. So yeah, so that has stayed with me for many, many years. And so even stories like that give me a better understanding in dealing with even mentally unstable persons and dealing with them with humanity, and helping them to understand that we understand that they are humans. um, you know, so to treat them kindly, to treat them with respect, to be patient with them, to help them to understand that we understand what they might be going through, you know.
Amen.
I believe and that we really don't have anything personal against them,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so yeah, so that
Thanks.
story really helped me back then and even up until this very moment. So thank you, Dr. Monica, for bringing that back up because that meant a lot to me back then and even now.
Thank you so
So
much for sharing that with us in class because that meant a lot to me and it still means a lot to me. I'm going to go back to Chaplain Matt Master, who has the floor. And
Doc,
go ahead.
Doc, I'm not sure how much time we have left because we've taken up quite a lot, but we haven't
I'm
even
here
yet
until you
talked
want to
about
go. I'm here until
because
you wanted to
we
go.
we
This
ha-
is
we
hold on,
haven't.
hold on. This is very, very special tonight. I want to say hello to Chaplain Ayodeji Bernard. I think she volunteers in the prison as well, in the
Yes,
British
she
Virgin
does.
Islands.
Yes.
Okay, so folks are coming in and they're saying that it is interesting. Jay Payne says, I worked in the prison in healthcare, and after 5 years, I had enough. So tonight's discussion is really hitting home. So I'm here until you're ready to go. All right, I'm good. So you go ahead. When I'm tired of you talking, I want you to drink some water. I'll come in. I'll give you a break so you can refresh yourselves and come right back. Good. Don't forget Chaplain El
You
Mead.
know.
All right, give him something to say. Chaplain El Mead, are you there?
Still here listening. Still here
So,
listening.
all right. Hopefully, so you got us. So you're monitoring us, maybe on YouTube or something. So you
Yeah,
can.
I'm monitoring. I'm speaking to you here, but I'm also monitoring on the YouTube. But I still don't hear when my associates are talking. So you will have to relate to me,
No, you'll
or
hear
they're
it on
not.
YouTube. So once you're monitoring, you'll hear it on YouTube. Okay? They haven't asked you for
No, I
anything
don't
yet.
hear them.
So we're gonna turn
I haven't
over
heard
back
them as yet.
to Chaplain Matt Master, and as long as you're monitoring the program on YouTube, you'll hear when he's talking to you, and we'll give you a minute to get in. Okay? All right. Go right ahead, Chaplain
Okay.
McMaster.
So since you say we're gonna have the time, we're gonna get to talk about the chaplain in the prison. But looking at mental health in prisons,
It's good.
and the issues
Okay.
that we see coming from people struggling with that mental balance.
Get this thing fixed.
Sometimes a person may look for something that will allow them to pass the day. So for that person in prison who is given the opportunity, you might see that they spend a lot of their time sleeping. For persons who may not have done any drug, illegal drug, before coming to prison, in order to cope with being in prison, they turn to substance misuse and abuse. As a result, all struggle with containing substance coming into the prison, substances coming into the prison, is one of our greatest challenges,
Mm.
because people in prison, they're simply trying to find a way to do their time and have that time go by as quickly as possible. That's an issue, because for that person who is in prison for an offense, that you're trying to help that person understand what may have gone wrong in their life and what they can do to correct it and move forward and return to society, because you know what, they're coming back to society. A lot of people don't think of prison and realize that the person who goes to prison is coming back into society.
Mm.
And the way we treat them in prison is either going to reform them or transform them.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
Now,
Say it
when
again.
we talk about, well, I said what we do with a person in prison can either reform them or it can transform them. But when I talk about transforming, I want us to bear in mind that that transformation is not always going to mean you're getting a better person, because you cannot treat a person inhumanely and expect that their mental health is going to cause them to become a better version of a human being. So we're going to transform them. And then that person is coming back into society. We have to look at the issues of what happens within the confines of prison and how we support persons who find themselves in prison, so that they are looking at the interventions that are being provided to help them find, first, the ability to find mental balance. Because if they find the mental balance, it will help them to behave in a way that is acceptable and desired, to help reform their behavior from criminality to becoming pro social and the kind of examples that society would want, that demonstrates rehabilitation. That's what we want to work with. But oftentimes, because we are not handling that person well,
Hmm.
that person is looking for some way to pass the time in prison, and that mental challenge that they're working with, sometimes it isolates them, it disconnects them. I heard once a prisoner made the comment that he had been in prison for 5 years and no one, not even his cellmate, ever saw his back. Yes, never saw his back, because there is a fear as to what could have happened.
Wow.
It's an environment not just of the conflict that comes as a result of losing liberty, but it is also an environment of intimidation.
Mm.
And sometimes people in prison have to put on the show of being something they're not. So their
Tough.
ego have to drive them to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And that is an issue that is also mental health
Wow.
related.
Wow. That's tough.
It is.
Never
And it is
seems to be.
something that people seldom think about because people think when they look at the movies and they see crime,
Mm-hmm.
or they listen to the news and they hear about crime, they think everyone who goes to prison is a monster
Yeah.
and should be treated as a monster
Mm-hmm.
until someone that you love dearly, someone who's close to you,
Mm-hmm.
find themselves under the microscope of the police officer
Wow.
who then takes them before a judge
Mm-hmm.
or a magistrate.
Mm-hmm.
And the magistrate or the judge says, it is unsafe for society to leave you in society.
Wow.
So you have to go to prison.
Ooh.
And your whole life changes. Life
And
is never going to be the same again.
and your loved ones start to think differently because now they're impacted directly.
And they also have to deal with the people that they associate with now looking at their association to that person who's in prison.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So the family is now dealing with the stigma, even if that person haven't been convicted of an offense.
Mm-hmm.
Because something that we don't think about, even when the person gets an innocent verdict, it doesn't mean that people are persuaded the person didn't do the crime or had nothing to do with the offense.
So true. So true.
It transforms a person's life.
It
It is
does.
going to have a mental impact on the quality of that person's existence.
Mm. Wow.
So we now have to think, is that person going to be isolated from society? Are they isolated from their family? And one of the things that I hear far too often from persons in prison, they know their friends, who they really are, know that they're in prison because no one is their friends who were their bosom buddies no longer visit them, no longer look out for them, no longer call them.
Yeah. And even spouses, the relationship just ends right there.
There you go.
Divorce, and that's it, even if they're innocent.
And you know, Dr. Monica, what is an unfortunate reality for some persons who have survived prison experience and come out? The
Mm-hmm.
spouses who remain with them,
Yeah.
rather than allowing them freedom, incarcerates them after they're freed from prison
Yes.
because they feel that you owe me and you must now become my prisoner to pay for what I've had to go through while I
God.
supported you in prison.
My God.
That is what we're talking about when we talk about mental health within a prison context
Mm.
and what the prison environment does to people.
Wow.
Not just the person who is incarcerated, the prison staff is impacted by it,
Yeah.
the family. And when we say family, we can talk about the staff for the prisoner officer, his family,
Mm-hmm.
her family. We can talk about the person who is in prison their family. We can talk
Mm,
about the victims of crime, their
mm,
family.
yes.
So the entirety of society is actually impacted negatively, and there is a mental unwellness that permeates society as a result of crime
Mm-hmm.
and suspicion of crime.
Wow. That's sad. Um, there's Elmead out there. Chaplain Allen, did you want to chime in on this? Let's give him a moment.
Yes, I was able to listen to Chaplain McMaster, and he was talking about the
There's Elmead out
the
there.
persons
Chaplain Allen, did you want to
who
chime
are
in on this?
probably incarcerated, and they may be innocent too. But if I may just say, one of the things also that is quite amazing when we're talking about persons who are incarcerated and dealing with mental health, um, you can have a situation where someone is going through maybe just a difficult patch in their life, haven't really had any mental illness before, but probably just a low ebb in their life, and they have become noticeable to the social services or to the social development personnel, and they all of a sudden is being branded as mentally ill. They begin to probably get treatment of some kind, but then they drop through the hole. They drop through that sense of being followed up and whatever. And what you then have is that they commit a crime, and so they enter into the prison system not as a mentally ill person, not as a person who has a mental illness, but as someone who committed a crime. Um, and what can well happen is that if the prison does not have that information, because this person may not really display any great signs of mental illness, but if the prison doesn't do the investigation, proper investigation, this inmate now even becomes worse than they were because of all of the different levels and aspects of the environment within the prison. One of the things that can easily happen is where we see family members lose that interest, and because their family member who is now in prison begins to act differently, they may come to see them and this is not my son, this is not my brother, this is not my sister or whatever, because their mental state has deteriorated again because of the environment. And what you then find is that the families begin to disassociate with that inmate, begins to, their visit becomes less. And if that inmate is still going through the judicial system, um, where maybe they go to court and they place on bail, their bail is being set for them, you can find that some um, relatives do not want to bail that person. And what they want to do is to leave them in the prison because they have become, for the use of a better word, they maybe become ashamed of that relative. They rather to know that the relatives stay in the prison, especially because they are now um, marked as mentally ill and a criminal, and that sends the inmate into a even worse spiraling situation. And so, it's really another way of seeing how the mental illness can develop to even a worse degree than before, because of the fact that they then begin to feel that they have been left alone, that nobody cares anymore, mother and father, brothers and sisters don't see them, don't come to look for them, and that person just spirals into a full blown psychiatric patient.
Wow. Are you there, Chaplain Allen? That
Yes,
question
yes.
came in from Ritzia Turnbull Smith. Thank you, Ritzia.
I didn't hear the question.
Okay, so as Chaplain Matt Master was saying, that Ritzia Turnbull Smith was asking if there's any mechanism such as therapeutic intervention that's in place to monitor inmates or staff to monitor their mental state while they're in prison rather than just waiting around for behavioral or other manifestations. Is there anything of intervention before they start acting out?
Yeah, you're hearing me now, right?
We are hearing you.
Okay, right. Yeah, there are interventions that can be used. I would say that there's never enough, though. But the inmate, the prison, and I think can be corrected for this, but lots of our prisons, and I would say that maybe for the Caribbean and so on, many of our prisons, we are not totally equipped to deal with inmates with mental illness. Really, there is a whole um, set of things that if we are going to deal with inmates who are known or who have developed mental illness, there's still a lot that we need to do. But yes, in passing, there are things we have in the prison, psychiatrists who does visit the prison, visit the inmates, and we also have there's also that avenue where inmates can be taken the um, to the hospitals and to the um, centers and psychiatric centers for support, for care, for further evaluations, and that sort of thing. However, I think when it comes to two areas of concern that I have is one is before the inmate gets into the
That
prison
was the question.
system, um, and some areas have been neglected because some inmates they are not being seen by their social workers, well, not inmates but some persons who are mentally ill, who have had some form of diagnosis of mental illness. They tend to drop through the hole, and they're not being seen by their social workers or whoever often enough. I've known of situations where uh, someone is in the community, they're going through a difficult time, a hard time. And sometimes because of the fact that the resources are so stretched that some persons don't get follow up as often as they should. And by time the social worker or whoever gets to realize what is happening, their clients are in the prison system because they have committed a crime. And so they then come into the system, and they many times they don't come in as a mentally ill person. If it's not been known properly, then it may take a few weeks or months before it's recognized, or you know whether someone is on treatment or not. And so there needs to be a better follow up on the outside. And then when we look at staff, I would say there is a great need for staff to be trained. The prison staff needs to be trained. Prison staff need to be more up to date with a number of things dealing with inmates with mental illness, whatever level they may be. I think that there's a need. There's a need for chaplains also. Not going to leave us out. There's a need for us as chaplain also to have continuous training and continuous development in the area of mental health. We must realize and remember that I think over the last maybe 10 years, if so much, mental health has become much more an illness which is much more to the forefront. It is being given much more uh, 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 looking into.
Attention.
We know much more attention, right? And so because of that, it means that even us as chaplains, even the staff will need to be updated in training and continuous training, knowing how to deal with the inmates because every person with mental illness who has some form of mental illness, then they're not a lost hope. They're not a lost cause. Many of them can, with good support, good therapeutic support, good medication, and whatever, can come back to live good lives in the society. But yes, there is a great need for the pre-treatment, the pre interventions, and also the interventions during they are while these persons are in the system. And there needs to be more support also for staff for themselves, for staff
Yes.
themselves, where staff can get counseling, staff can go have various go through various therapeutic programs to help them to deal to be a better person with the people who they are seeking to serve.
I totally agree with that.
And unfortunately, from my purview, Dr. Monica,
Yes.
my observation is that we do not have sufficient resources that gives us the liberty of intervention and care before we have a problem. Unfortunately, not only do we not have resources that allows us this, but we are often strapped by legislations and policies
Oh,
that tie our hand even when we have a feeling or a sense or a sixth sense that there is need for attention,
mm-hmm.
but we don't have legislations and we don't have policies that allows for the intervention. And sometimes the way I see it playing out is that that person, while in society, crying out for help, can't get it until a behavior of theirs is brought to the attention of law enforcement.
Sad.
Then they end up in the prison system, not looking at their mental well being, but their criminal conduct.
Yes.
And because the prison is strapped for access to resources, we're not able to respond with the kind of intervention that that person may be in need of. And unfortunately, that is one of the problems that, from my purview, we're challenged with in providing care for the person who is dealing with mental health challenges.
And unfortunately, that's a very huge issue because resources for intervention is going to take money and people, bodies.
Mhm.
So I'm listening to you, and the first thing that came to mind is lobbying. Lobbying, like asking. So it's going to take those that are working in these areas of specialty, like yourself, Chaplain Elmead, Chaplain Robinson. I mean, all the prison chaplains. And I was able to meet quite a number of you when we had our conference in Cayman Islands. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on.
Uh-huh.
You all need these resources. And I'm thinking, how are you going to get the attention of those? Now, let me back up. While we were in the Cayman Islands, we were able to have tea. We were invited to tea with the Governor General. That's what they
With
call
the
her, or the
governor.
governor,
The
the
governor.
governor
Governor.
of the Cayman Islands. And while we were there, I don't know if you remember, but she was asking pointed questions as to the prison system and how they're able to help. And that was very good. Well, I don't know if anything has happened since we left, but I think what you will have to do is to probably get a committee together and invite people of influence, the ones
Well,
that
well,
are being affected.
well, Dr. Monica,
I
let
don't
me
know.
interrupt you. Let me interrupt you to say this,
Go ahead.
because you see the conversation that we're having right now.
Yes.
That is a part of the solution.
Yes.
That is happening more frequently, and it's it's beginning to become the conversation at the dinner table, the conversation in the workplace,
Hmm.
because we're now focusing on mental health in the workplace. We're having more of these conversations.
Good.
And that is a good start. The fact that we're having the conversation, it means that people are intentionally becoming aware and they're intentionally making themselves aware of the problem. And the more of us paying attention to the problem, the more we will begin to find little bits and pieces of the puzzle to come up with solutions and interventions that will help us as we go forward. So it's not a hopeless situation. It's not a hopeless case, because the fact that we're having a conversation
Amen.
says that we're beginning to move in the right direction. No, no person who has a substance abuse problem ever overcomes it until they're ready to have a conversation that they're struggling with the problem.
Good.
Once you're prepared to have a conversation that you are struggling, then we're able to have an intervention. Then we're able to look at ways in which, even with struggling resources,
Hmm.
we can find a way to reverse or to manage the problem.
Okay.
And
Sounds good.
and and
Ritzia Turnbull Smith, thank you. She says thank you. And she mentioned review or revision of mental and other health legislation and policies.
Mhm.
Okay, then
Uh,
Chaplain Ayodeji Bernard mentioned the movie Adolescence. She says it truly depicts the mental anguish that the family of the offender faces. I've never
mhm.
seen that one.
I've
Chaplain
heard of it.
Elmead,
I haven't actually seen it yet.
haven't seen it?
Yes.
I
Chaplain
haven't seen it
Elmead,
yet,
have
but I've
you
heard of it.
seen it? The movie
Yes. You're hearing me?
Adolescence?
Yes, I did see it. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So
it's
my
a very good movie. It's one that I've recommended to a number of um, parents,
mhm,
relatives to look at. Um,
okay.
right. It's 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 it, it's a difficult and sometimes we really don't stop to understand how difficult it is for families, for relatives,
Mm,
when they have families in prison, more so when these relatives fall between these two major illnesses of mental illness, and then also has to be dealt with the criminal codes and has to be dealt with in prison, both
mm,
psychologically and socially. And so families, there's a lot, as a chaplain, part of my role is that I work a lot with families of inmates,
yes.
um, when someone in the family passes away, it's my responsibility, it's our responsibility to go and speak to the inmate at first and let them know what has happened, and that itself is can be quite traumatic. And then we offer that continued support to families. But it's not only just when there's someone pass away, but generally sometimes the families, relatives would call in the prison and would ask, is there anyone that can help?
Mm-hmm.
This is what I'm going through, whether they're grandparents, whether they are mothers, fathers, and their fathers who really will give their all up because of the situation of their sons. And so it's not an easy road, but it's one which is becoming, as Stephen, Chaplain Stephen said, that the discussions are beginning to take place. The
Yes.
discussions are beginning to take place. One of the things about, you spoke really earlier on, Dr. Monica, about the conference that was held last year in Cayman Islands. And that conference came out of the fact because we as chaplains, we felt that we needed support from other chaplains, some other persons who
Yes.
understands what we are going through. It's not easy. You can't speak to maybe not even your superintendents in the prison and whoever because of confidentiality policies and so on.
Right.
But when you can find a chaplain, they may not be right at your side. They may not even be in the same island. For me, in Anguilla, I am the only registered chaplain there at the moment.
Wow.
And so I work with the fire, I work with the police, I work with the schools, I work with families. And because of that, that's where the conference um, really came about. And we'll talk about that a little later. But it is important because as chaplains, we work a lot with families also, and we don't just come and say, Lord bless you, Lord bless you. No, we have to tackle some of the very serious social problems and psychological problems that not just inmates are dealing with, but their relatives are also dealing with them. And as chaplains, we have to deal with it. It's difficult at times, and um, Stephen said our resources are limited. Our
Yes.
resources are limited. And I can say for sure that since we have formed this um, um, British Overseas Territories Chaplain Network, it has been such a joy because I can call upon any one of those chaplains from the different countries. Sometimes we're online in the evening, we're talking, we're sharing, we're laughing. Um, and because you have that sort of network, it may help to make your work a much easier. Not all the time, but easier. And so, yeah, but it is quite difficult for relatives as we see them at times.
Mm.
Now,
Wow.
Dr. Monica,
Go ahead.
there is so much for us to talk about.
Hmm.
This program won't end if we keep talking.
Right. I
Um,
was about to
so
say
I
that.
don't think we'll get to speak about the role of the chaplain. But because we keep mentioning the conference,
Yes.
I want us to talk a little bit about the conference because what we're looking at doing in Anguilla when we have the next British Overseas Territory Prison Chaplains Network conference is we're looking at how we provide care
Mm.
for the persons providing care, which is chaplains and persons. We're hoping that we can reach more of the persons who partner with us in providing spiritual care in the prisons and in other agencies within the country so that we can begin to now address how we are cared for and how we provide care for each other so that those persons who might be struggling, like with mental illness, we're able to provide the support for them because I can't support someone until I understand how it's
Exactly.
affecting myself. I have to take care of me before I can take care of you.
Correct.
And what we want to do in this conference is to begin addressing that subject, the prison environment, what a prison environment actually is, because I find that a lot of people who want and ask to come to prison to do ministry, they're coming with a desire, they want to preach the gospel, they want to preach
Talk
the
about that.
person. They want to bring Jesus to prison. But I would like to suggest to people that Jesus is already in the prison. He's
Amen.
omnipresent. So what we need is to find a way to make the necessary connections to people who are in prison, to people who work with prison, to people who are impacted by prison. And so that's what we're hoping to do in October when we meet in this conference, to begin to address the persons who are providing care in the prison system. And
Oh,
what we're trying to do, Dr. Monica, is we're trying to bring the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada, and the Caribbean. We're trying to bring them all together in this conference. So we're going to expand from what we did in Cayman Islands last year. We're
that's
reaching out a
nice.
little bit further.
That's nice. So last year, as you mentioned, a group of prison chaplains, of course, Chaplain Matt Master, Chaplain Elmead, Allen, Chaplain Robinson, and some others like Chaplain
Dennis
Santucci.
Santucci,
Your Santucci? He's Santucci, right?
Chaplain Santucci,
Chaplain Santucci, and he was from the Bahamas? No,
Bermuda,
from
Bermuda,
Bermuda.
Bermuda,
Then we had Chaplain Dennis Simmons from Turks and
Turks and
Caicos
Caicos.
Islands. Yes. And these gentlemen, they're actually boots on the ground. This is their job. That's where they work. They are in prison chaplaincy. And we also had the chaplain general from, can you tell me again? From UK?
The Ministry of
UK.
Justice in the United Kingdom.
The chaplain general from the Ministry of Justice in the United Kingdom. Wow. And that was James
Ridge.
Rich.
J-
Ridge.
James,
Right.
yes.
Chaplain James Ridge.
And we're expecting him again in October.
Awesome. I see he loves the Caribbean. He's going to move. And of course, I had the distinct privilege of joining with his chaplains as well. And we went to Grand Cayman, that's in the Cayman Islands. Chaplain Yvonne Rollins was there. Chaplain Dr. Angela Samuels, Dr. Yvonne Rollins, and myself, three of us represented GCA along with Chaplain Matt Master. So we're well represented. And we had like 5 days on the beautiful island, but it was really work. Putting some stuff together, they formed a network of prison chaplains. And of course, even though that's their major area, these chaplains are trained to work in the hospital, in the fire department, law enforcement, wherever they're needed. Number one, because what you're looking at, they're the only chaplain, really. Some of them are the only registered chaplain on that island, the entire island. So if you're listening in to us and you'd like to be trained as a chaplain, please go to www.emetseminary.education. That's EMETSEMINARY or you can go to Global Chaplains Alliance and it will link you to Emmett Seminary where you can be trained. The need is great. And so we were there, we put some stuff in order and head on back home. And so part two of our boots on the ground now, you just heard Chaplain Matt Master says we're gonna be talking about how we're gonna be taking care of the caretakers, right? The
Mhm.
chaplains. You think we really need care? We need care?
Dr.
We so
Monica,
tough, right? We handle
uh-uh.
everybody else issue.
If we are taking on
That's the
people's
reason why we need it
issues,
more.
Say that again, Chaplain Elmead.
That's the reason, more reason why we need care.
I
You
love
know,
that.
we do everything. We hands on there.
And Chaplain Robinson said earlier on, I think it was him, that he was so grateful that he had you guys he could bounce off on. Or was it Matt Master? Somebody said it earlier on. And that's why we have the Alliance, Global Chaplains Alliance, as well. So we could bounce off each other. Sometimes we just got to let our hair down, take off the chaplaincy cape, and be ministered to. And so this is going to take place where and when?
Elmid?
This will take place in Anguilla. It's going to be the last week of October this year, and so if you're interested, we want to invite you to come. One of the things we're going to be doing also, we are hoping to be able to train, get people. Yes, going to be get people trained and who are interested in becoming chaplains also to to sign up so that they can become chaplains and that they can begin to um, be a part of this great work. So people can write to you at the moment, Dr. Monica, and then you will forward the address to us. And within the next few weeks, we should be starting to have all of the packages together, so people can register early. And we will have some time also where for those of you who never heard of Anguilla before, it's an awesome, nice little island, and you can come. And we will give you some time that you can visit some of our beautiful beaches also.
Oh,
So we really believe in God to have a great time. Um, so, Pastor Chaplain Bentley and Chaplain McMaster, um, they are all the part of the team who is responsible for this. So you send your information to us, and we will be emailing you with the information very soon, so you can register for this important thing. You know, we have a lot of people, as Chaplain McMaster said, who volunteer in the prison. Lots of people come into the prison, and really and truly, I just want to expand on what he said. Lots of people come into the prison, and they really come in with some different views and different this what they want to do and so on. And the training is important for them too, and
yes.
so they do get training, and once they'll be part of who will be coming to the conference also. I'm sure, Stephen, yes, more that you may have to add to that, Stephen
Let me
or
get in
Bentley.
between you guys before we let Chaplain Stephen loose. So, uh, number one, we're gonna get a website up and going. I build you a website, all right? So I'm gonna build you a website so we can channel, send everybody there and give them forms so that they can register, all right? So we can take care of that.
Yes.
Secondly, some people hear Anguilla and they're like, where in Georgia is that? Atlanta? Anguilla? Okay. So no. So Anguilla is in the Caribbean. And Chaplain Ayodeji Bernard said, I lived in Anguilla. Beautiful island. So I've never been there, but the little bit I know about it is before Nevis and St. Kitts broke off. It was like a three island thingy going on, Nevis and Kitts and Anguilla.
Yeah.
So yes, so it's not in Georgia, guys. It's not next door to Atlanta. It's in the beautiful, beautiful Caribbean. All right. So go
And
ahead.
they actually have white sand.
White sand beaches.
You need shades when you go to the beach in Anguilla, or
Ooh,
you
is that
can't
white?
see. The sand is that white.
Aye. So that's beautiful. All right. So tell us more about it. And it's going to happen when?
So our traveling days are going to be the last Saturday in October
Hmm.
and the first Saturday in November. We have established a staple, Dr. Monica,
Yes, sir.
that every year, the last Saturday, whenever it falls in October,
Hmm.
and the first Sunday in November will be our traveling days. And The week in between that will be our conference. And
That
we're going to be focusing on ensuring that people understand what a chaplain is
yes.
and the difference between chaplains and other ministers of religion. Because I don't know how many people realize that chaplains aren't just Christians,
Thank you for saying that.
but the chaplains are found in any and every traditional religion.
Hmm.
And you know what? There are chaplains who are
Not
from no
even,
religion at all.
not even
So,
religious.
so we begin to help people understand what it is to be a chaplain.
Yes.
And we provide the understanding of the environment in which chaplains work. And I think someone made the comment that chaplains will bravely go places pastors dare not.
That is true. That is
So,
so true.
it's so important for us to help people understand the difference it is to be a chaplain, the impact that a chaplain can have, and we, of course, we start in this from within the context of prison. So we want people to understand what a prison environment is and how
Hmm.
prison is so different to any other organization or any other agency in the society.
Hmm.
And so we're going to be focusing on this. And we want people to begin to express an interest so that we can, as we build it, we can communicate to people what they're going to walk away with when we
Yes.
meet in Anguilla in October.
All right. You'll have that website up, I promise you, by now and the weekend. Yes, because what we want to do is to get prison chaplains from all across the globe to come. That's what we're
That would
aiming
be
for.
fantastic. That would be fantastic
Yes.
because remember now we're British overseas territories and we're trying to make sure that we connect all the British overseas territories on the planet.
Yes.
And to do that, we're going to have to reach within our region. And
Hmm.
as you have heard, we've connected the United Kingdom, the United States. We're trying to connect Canada.
Canada. Hmm.
So we're trying to make sure that we've covered the triangle over the Caribbean,
Yes. But it is
and
still
we'll, we'll,
open.
we'll we'll reach all people.
Okay, good. That was my question. All right. So here we go. So again, that was a great trip. And I want to say thanks once more to you, Chaplain Matt Master, to Chaplain Elmead, Chaplain Bentley, Chaplain Santusi, Chaplain Simmons, also to Chaplain Dr. Yvonne Rollins, Chaplain Dr. Angela Samuels, and we had some other folks who came on in Cayman.
Amen.
Yes, like we had former chaplain of the prison, Kathy Gon- Gomez, I think her name is.
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
and she was there, and I mean, just everybody who came on out. You mentioned something earlier. We might need another program for that, but there's so many ministries that are attached to churches that they call theirs a prison ministry. And their primary focus is to bring Jesus into the prison without realizing that Jesus is already
It's already
there
there.
and they need to bring other things that are not there.
Hmm.
They need to do that.
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct.
So we're gonna need a different program for that since this one is, yes, since this one is focused on mental health in penal institutions, then you know Caribbean Gospel FM is here, and we'll be having more programs, and we will talk about that because many churches they just put together these ministries and they go visit the prison. We have a chaplain that's attached to a prison ministry, a church prison ministry. So when he goes to the prison, he cannot function or he does not function as a chaplain. He's just a part of a ministry that preach.
Hmm.
You know, I'm looking at the conflict because he's a trained chaplain and he knows that as a chaplain, you cannot what is it?
Proselytize.
Proselytize. You cannot
Proselytize.
proselytize. So now as a part of a prison ministry. That's what they do. They proselytize. So we got to talk about that and probably educate the folks. And maybe your ministry might not be readily accepted, and you think people don't want Christ, and you start to hukulamasanda them and curse them in the name of Jesus. That's not it. You don't understand that Jesus is already there. You're trying to bring somebody that's already there. So it's basically how you work your game and come back in and just work with the chaplain. Just work with the chap. We have Christian chaplains in these prisons, and they have to work with imams so that the Muslims can get their spiritual care too, or the Buddhist priest. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So it's education for those who would like to be trained as a chaplain. It is totally different from just doing prison ministry. All right. So, oh, Dr. Samuels is in. She says, do you have to be a chaplain to come to Anguilla?
No, because
No, you can
what we want
come
to
and
accomplish in Anguilla.
listen and be a part of what's going on, because maybe you might be able to help. You know, when you wherever you're coming from, you can go back and help to teach others and encourage others. There are lots of people who are working in sometime prison ministry.
Uh, along with what Elmida's just said, when we execute this conference,
Mm-hmm.
we are hoping that the fire department, other agencies of government like police, hospital,
Hospitals,
hospices, other areas where there is need for spiritual care for
emergency.
people who are dealing with trauma
Mm-hmm.
and crises,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding and learning how through trauma and crises we bring compassionate care to people to help them connect with a better quality of life, and for them to be able to find the peace and balance that they are looking for, that they're searching for as they deal with some of life's pressing issues. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish in Anguilla. And so we're looking for people who are not just prison chaplains, but people who have an interest in how to provide spiritual care for people who are in need.
Thank you so much. And I'd be remiss if I didn't add that along with white sand beaches, Anguilla has pink sand beaches. Okay? Just so you know. That will give you the to get up and go. So we're going to put this website together so that folks can be directed there, get all the information that they need. They should be able to register and all of that. And prices should be there, all of it. We're going to work it out, right?
We're going to work it out.
Okay, good. So we're going to get it up and running before by the weekend, I should say. So you can all start registering and make it a family trip. You the chaplain, spouse is not a chaplain, teenager is not a bring them along. Yes. Bring them along. Invite your pastors. And you know what would be good? Those that are really interested in prison ministry, it would be good if they could come because they get to hear another perspective. I remember when Cayman Islands, we had some folks who were interested or they were actually doing prison ministry, and they came and their eyes were opened and they learned the difference between prison ministry and prison chaplaincy. So come on out. We're open for everybody. All right.
Thank
Anything
you,
else you
Dr.
want to say?
Monica. No, I think we should end it here because
I just want to
we'll
say to
keep
you,
going.
Dr. Monica, thank you so
Yes.
much for having us on this program tonight. And I think it would be right for me to say this extended program tonight.
That's okay.
Um, it's a joy. Yeah, it's a joy.
Yes. God bless you. We were not able to get you in on video, but we were able to put your photograph there as a placeholder, and you were able to come in amidst the issues that we had at the beginning of the program. Thank you for all that you do there in Anguilla. God bless you. We're hoping to see you soon. and to continue connecting as chaplains because we do need chaplains. Chaplains need chaplain. We also need a chaplain as a chaplain. So we continue to bounce off on each other and encourage each other. So thank you, Chaplain Elmead Allen. All right, Chaplain Master.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for all that you do, not only for the British Overseas Territories of Prison Chaplains, but also for Global Chaplains Alliance. Thank you for your hard work. I see you trying to pull the folks together. Listen to me, British version of BVI. Make sure you work with him, okay? He has some great plans, and we'd like to see them come to fruition. So until then, we want to say thanks to Chaplain Bentley Robinson. We lost him along the way. Not sure what happened, but when he was in earlier, he really made some interesting remarks and was a part of the program to the fullest. So we want to say thank you for what you do as prison chaplains. May God richly, richly bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Doc. And we hope that we will have an opportunity to engage in some further conversation. And hopefully, we won't take as much time next time.
I don't worry about the time. That's okay. Take care and God
Okay.
bless you.
God bless you.
God bless you.
God bless.
I want to say many, 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 many thanks to these young men who came on out tonight and just blessed us. Thank you so much. It was really an interesting talk tonight, mental health in penal institutions. I hope that you were able to catch the program. If you didn't, boy, I don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say. But we did have a great time tonight. We're going to get that website up and running, but the last Saturday in October to the first, it's going to be for a whole week. Last Saturday in October to first Sunday in November. And in between that time, the conference will roll on. This year it is set to take place in Anguilla. So we got Nevis and Kitts and Anguilla right around there. I got ties to Nevis, so yeah, I need to go. Hopefully I can hop on over. Want to say thank you to those who came on out. Chaplain Ayadeja Bernard says time well spent. Ah. And Ritzia Turnbull Smith says very enlightening conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ritzia. Thank you. Please continue to share this program. Even after we're gone, you can share the video, share it with families and friends, and even those who might have loved ones that are incarcerated. You never know what this can do for them. So please go ahead and share the information with them. Life throws challenges at us all. Sometimes those challenges impact our minds and our spirits, leaving us feeling stressed, anxious, or even overwhelmed. Taking care of your mental health is just as important as your physical health. Join us on the Mental Health Talk right here on Caribbean Gospel Radio FM during the month of May at 7 p.m. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We open up conversations about mental health, exploring real life issues, sharing coping strategies, as you heard tonight, and connecting you with insights that can make a difference. Why? Because your well-being matters. The Mental Health Talk is brought to you by Global Chaplains Alliance, a dedicated organization committed to providing spiritual and pastoral care in diverse settings, from communities to correctional facilities. They stand for compassion and support for all. Invest in your well-being and listen to the Mental Health Talk for a healthier mind, a stronger spirit. It was my pleasure being here with you tonight, my friends. It is time to go. But before we do that, I have to let you know where you can go and get training. All right. I know you want to be trained. In moments of crisis, loss, or profound change, there's a vital need for compassionate presence, for someone who can listen, someone who can offer solace, someone who can provide spiritual care. If you envision yourself filling this essential role, then chaplaincy might just be your path. Emet Global Theological Seminary and College is seeking dedicated individuals for our upcoming cohort. Whether you dream of serving as a chaplain in healthcare, in corrections, or community ministries, our associate's degree in chaplaincy and pastoral care education offers the robust training and spiritual development you need to excel. Join a community that's committed to impactful, empathetic service. Ready to embark on a deeply rewarding journey of ministry? Applications are now open at www.emetseminary.education. Visit www.emetseminary.education to begin your application today. Just want to say many, many thanks to all of you who came out, our Facebook family, YouTube family. I see you all, each and every one. Those who are listening in incognito. Yeah, I got some family members who love to do that. Thank you so very much for coming in tonight. Again, I want to say many thanks to Chaplain Stephen McMaster. And as you now know, he's a long-standing and highly respected chaplain from the British Virgin Islands. Chaplain McMaster serves with the Global Chaplains Alliance, where he's also the commandant of GCA in the British Virgin Islands. Thanks again to Chaplain Elmead Allen. He is a pastor and a dedicated prison chaplain that serves in Anguilla. Thank you, Chaplain Bentley Robinson, another committed prison chaplain from the Cayman Islands. Thank you all so very, very much. And again, I just want you to know that Chaplain Stephen McMaster already has his associates in chaplaincy and pastoral care education. But Chaplains Allen and Robinson, they have both recently completed their associate's degree in chaplaincy and pastoral care education with Emet Global Theological Seminary and College right here in Atlanta, Georgia. And they have demonstrated their ongoing commitment to professional excellence in their vital work. We just want to say thank you to them. Thank you so much for making sure that you are doing what it takes to excel. That is it. We're here cheering you on. Thank you so much. Hey, guys, I am Monica Dennis Jones, a.k.a. Dr. Monica, and it was my pleasure being here with you tonight. Take care and walk good. Until we meet again, we come back on Wednesday, same time, same place, so that we can do another episode. Look, this is the last week in the month, right? So we have Wednesday and Friday. We have 2 more to go. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on board as we continue the month of May. We started strong, guys, and we must end strong. Ta-da! Good night. God bless you. Now may the saving grace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the love of God the Father, the full fellowship of the Holy Spirit, the Comforter, rest, remain, and abide with us all, now and forevermore. And all God's people say, amen and amen. Go light your world. Bye-bye. Good night.